Welcome back to MSP After Hours, where I say the quiet part out loud. Before we get into today's topic, I want to give you a little context to where some of these ideas discussed in this episode came from. Over the years, I've spent a ton of time coaching people on mindset, business executives, professional triathletes, and everyday people who just want to perform at a higher level in their lives. At one point, I even went through all of the coursework from a PhD in psychology and was beginning the final stages of that program, the dissertation. But around the same time, I also started this MSP. What I quickly discovered is that building a business and finishing a dissertation at the same time was incredibly difficult. Eventually, I had to make a decision. Do I finish the dissertation or do I build this business? As the saying goes, if you chase two rabbits, you'll catch neither. So I chose to build this business. Even though I chose the business path, the psychology part never left me. All of that research around mindset, stress, and performance ended up becoming incredibly useful while running this company. The things I talk about today are the very things that allowed me to maintain a very low level of stress while building it. As I began to interact with MSP groups, though, I started noticing that other MSP owners were having some of the same difficulties that some of my previous clients were having. The biggest challenge most of them faced really wasn't technical and it wasn't around their industry. Their challenges were psychological. I came across a post in an MSP Facebook group recently that really stuck with me. The question was super simple. What's one challenge you're navigating in your MSP right now? Now, you'd expect hiring, tools, ticket volumes, or margins, but one MSP owner answered with something brutally honest. He said his biggest challenge right now was his stress level. Not a specific technical problem, not a client issue. Just the reality that his mind never shuts off because there are always things he has to be thinking about. What caught my attention was how many other business owners in the MSP space responded with the same kind of reaction. Get out of my head. That moment is actually one of the reasons I wrote the High Performance MSP. If you want to go deeper into the ideas we're talking about in this episode, I break those frameworks down in much more detail in the book. I'll put a link in the bottom in the show notes. Most MSP owners didn't start as entrepreneurs. They started as technicians, sysadmins, and engineers. People who are good at solving problems. You spend years fixing issues for someone else's company and eventually realize something. You're doing the work, but someone else is making all the money. So you go out on your own. And that's how a lot of MSPs are born. The challenge is that being great at IT and being great at running a business are two completely different skill sets. Technical ability gets the company started, but leadership, pricing, systems, strategy, and mindset are what allow the company to grow. Without those things in place, the business grows while the owner's brain remains the operating system for the entire company. Every decision runs through them. Every escalation lands on their desk. Every major problem eventually becomes their responsibility. Over time, that creates a massive mental load. One of the most important ideas to understand is that stress doesn't come directly from events. It comes from the thoughts we attach to those events. Your brain interprets situations based upon patterns stored in your subconscious mind. As I explain in the book, your subconscious mind is essentially a memory bank for your habits, experiences, beliefs, assumptions, and biases. Every time something happens in your business, a client complaint, a security alert, or an employee mistake, your conscious mind immediately asks your subconscious mind, what do you know about this? Whatever experience or beliefs are stored in that memory bank shape how you interpret that situation. Once the interpretation happens, it creates a chain reaction. The thought you have about the situation creates an emotion. The emotion influences how you respond, and that response produces the outcome you get. The thought is the cause, and everything that follows is the effect. Two MSP owners can experience the same exact situations and have completely different experiences. One reacts with stress and frustration, while the other reacts with curiosity and problem solving. The event is the same, but the interpretation is different, which leads to completely different outcomes. Most people believe that events create the stress, but in reality, the thought about the event did. Did you know the average person has somewhere between 12,000 and 50,000 thoughts every day? About 95% of those are repetitive, and about 80% of them are negative. When you're constantly thinking things like, what if we miss something? Or what if this client leaves? Your brain starts treating those thoughts as patterns. Those patterns get stored in the subconscious memory bank we talked about earlier. Over time, your brain begins searching for evidence that confirms those patterns. That's why you can have 10 things going right in your business, but the one small problem dominates all of your thinking. Another reason MSP owners feel constant stress has to do with where their mind spends its time. Your mind can live in 3 places: the past, the present, or the future. When the mind spends too much time in the past, that's where depressive thinking tends to live. You replay mistakes, regret decisions, and revisit situations you wish you had handled differently. When the mind moves into the future, that's where anxiety tends to live. The future is uncertainty, and our brains begin to imagine everything that could go wrong. For MSP owners, that's easy to do because our entire industry revolves around preventing problems before they happen. The key is understanding that the past and the future are not inherently bad places for the mind to visit. The past is valuable for reflection. Reflection helps us learn from our mistakes, improve systems, and become better leaders. The future is valuable for preparation. Preparation helps us build better security strategies, disaster recovery plans, and business systems in general. The goal is not to eliminate thinking about the past or the future. The goal is to use them intentionally when returning your attention to the present moment, because the present moment is where performance actually happens. If stress is influenced by our thoughts and our thoughts follow our attention, the next question becomes, what are you focusing on? Interestingly, most people can actually define the word focus. In the High Performance MSP, I share a story involving my daughter that illustrates this idea perfectly. We use the word focus all the time. Teachers tell students to focus, managers tell employees to focus, and business owners tell themselves they need to focus. But if you actually ask someone to define what focus means, most people struggle to explain it. Focus is simply the direction of your attention. The problem is that most of us were never taught that. We were just told to focus as if it was something that would happen automatically. Nobody ever taught us that focus is a skill you actually have to train. And then we wonder why people get frustrated when someone can't focus. That never really made sense to me. For MSP owners, this becomes especially important because our entire work environment trains our attention towards problems. Ticket queues, alerts, monitors, dashboards, and escalations constantly pull our attention towards what's broken. Earlier, we talked about how thoughts create emotions, but here's something most people don't realize. A thought is simply self-talk. It's the internal conversation happening inside your head. When a client sends a frustrated email, there's a voice in your head commenting on it. When a technician makes a mistake, there's a voice reacting to it. If you want to change your thoughts, you don't start by trying to think differently. You start by interrupting the self-talk. When you notice your mind going down a negative path, you stop. Sometimes that means literally saying the word stop. Then redirect the self-talk towards something more productive. Instead of telling yourself, this client is going to be a nightmare, you might redirect the conversation in your head towards something like, all right, what's the actual problem here? I mean, when stress arises, another useful question you can ask yourself is this really true? When we're stressed or worried, we tend to awfulize every situation and imagine the worst possible outcome. But when you pause and ask whether the story in your head is actually true, you often realize the reality is far less stressful than the version that you created in your mind. Running an MSP will always come with pressure. Clients rely on you. Businesses rely on you. Systems rely on you. But pressure and stress are not the same thing. Pressure comes from responsibility, while stress comes from how we interpret that responsibility in our minds. When you upgrade the way you think about challenges in front of you, you don't just become a calmer business owner, you become a better leader. That's exactly why I wrote the High Performance MSP, because the biggest upgrade most MSP businesses need isn't another tool in their stack. It's a better operating system in the mind of the person running the company. If you do want to go deeper into these frameworks, I break them down step by step in the book, and there's a link below to get to that book. See you next time.